So now that the 2020 NFL draft is over, we do what is normal for us to do. We pretend like we know that we have all the answers and we are ready to declare right here and right now who the winners and who the losers were. And again, I'm going to tell you, that's what makes this fun. Because you can go back in 2, 3, 4 years and you can give somebody credit for being right, give them their dap, their props, their love, if you will. Or more notably, because we're talking about the environment of the internet, you'll find these situations in times where somebody was wrong and you will blast into kingdom come in hell. But, whatever. You learn from your mistakes more than you do your successes. So let's go ahead and talk about who I saw in terms of teams being the biggest winners and losers from the 2020 NFL draft. And I'm going to start off with the winners. I look at the Arizona Cardinals. To me, with the trade for DeAndre Hopkins, they kind of put themselves in a position where they could gamble on upside an athlete with their 8th overall pick, and that's exactly what they did, taking Isaiah Simmons, who I think is going to play linebacker in the NFL, taking him at pick 8. And you have concerns about whether or not he's going to be a gadget guy that really doesn't have a home, or to me, I always remind people, Urlacher was a bit of a gadget guy, and he's now in the Hall of Fame. Miles Jack was getting some of those questions about whether he was safety or linebacker, and he worked out pretty well for the Jaguars. Looking at that, though, when you look at the position, you say Isaiah Simmons, it's worth the gamble. It's worth the shot because if it pays off astronomically. Then you talk about the Cardinals being able to get arguably a first-round talent at offensive tackle, left tackle at that, in Josh Jones from Houston. That's very nice work. But ultimately, they traded a second-round pick and got DeAndre Hopkins. That's pretty much ball game. When you're able to do that, if Isaiah Simmons works out, fantastic. If Josh Jones ends up being a long-term starter at offensive tackle for the club, super duper. But if not, they were able to take a second-round pick, dump David Johnson's contract off on the Texans, and in return, get a bona fide elite wide receiver in the league in the prime of his career. That makes the Cardinals winners just for that one single move. And then I look at the Baltimore Ravens. And to me, I look at this Ravens draft, getting Patrick Queen to fall into their laps at 28. Then looking at what they did in day 2 with J.K. Dobbins and Madubuike from Texas A&M and Duvernay and Harrison. And even day 3, Bredesen and Geno Stone getting him, they get him in round 7? You look at that draft class. There was quality of talent. There was depth. It looks like there was great value, great players had on all 3 days. This is the type of draft that you're looking at a team that 2019 had an outstanding regular season but came up short in the playoffs. This feels like the type of draft that you look back on that puts the Ravens in a position to get to and maybe win a Super Bowl. That's what it feels like to me. And I might say something similar, it feels almost sacrilege to say, but for the Dallas Cowboys. Sitting there at pick 17, a couple of years ago with the Chargers, had Derwin James fall right into their lap in that slot. That's exactly what the Cowboys had happen here. To be able to get CeeDee Lamb in round 1, arguably wide receiver 1 in this draft class, then to turn around in round 2 and get Trayvon Diggs, the corner from Alabama, who a lot of people had a round 1 grade on, get him in the middle of round 2, and then be able to get Neville Gallimore to fall into their laps in the middle of round 3, who at one point in time was being mocked and the back end of round 1, being mocked in a lot of places in round 2, now being able to get him in round 3. Then you throw in some of the day 3 picks, Reggie Robinson the second, the Baez kid, I think I said his name right. If not, I don't give a crap. From Wisconsin, the interior lineman, maybe he's your long-term replacement for Travis Frederick. Bradley Anae, the edge rusher from Utah. You look at this, it felt like throughout the draft, they just got really good value with these picks. Some of them at key spots on the roster. And I look at what the Cowboys did. Maybe they need to lock up Jerry Jones on his own for the draft more often. Who the hell knows? But it was really, really nice work, and the Cowboys didn't have to do a lot of effort. They just kind of stayed pat, stayed patient, and let the draft come to them, which so often is the case when we see teams do really, really well. The New York Jets, looking at Mekhi Becton, the offensive lineman from Louisville. I guarantee with Becton, he will be better than at least one or two of the left tackles taken in front of him in this draft. I can almost guarantee that. And when you look at it, and you see Becton, you look at him and you say, this guy is a freak. He's got all of this size. He's got all of this athleticism. He fills a massive need for this Jets team. Value feels right. I felt like a really good pick. And then you look at day 2, getting Denzel Mims, who you were hearing talk about going at the tail end of round 1. Ended up getting him at the tail end of round 2. Maybe he will be what Devin Smith was supposed to be out of Ohio State a few years ago for this Jets team. Then you look at the drafting in the top end of round 3 of Ashton Davis. Well, you look at it and say, well, you got Jamal Adams. Where's the need? The value is so great as long as you don't utilize him in run support as a tackler. You know, the value was tremendous to be able to get him at the top of round 3. And Zuniga, the edge rusher from Florida, you know, if he's healthy, he's probably much better than the draft position he was at. Like, you look at it even in day 3, getting P. Ryan, the running back from Florida, and Morgan for Florida International. And I love the pick of Bryce Hall. At the point that they got him in round 5, I thought the Jets quietly had a really, really, really good draft weekend all 3 days. And then I'll go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And you look at this team, Tristan Wirfs to me is a day 1 starter on the offensive line, whether that's tackle or guard, doesn't matter. He's starting somewhere. So they were able to get Wirfs to fall into a range where they could jump up 1 spot in the draft and take him. Antoine Winfield Jr. fills a massive need, was great value. He's a day 1 starter in that secondary at a safety. Keyshawn Vaughn, I think, should contribute out of the backfield pretty close to right away. Tyler Johnson in round 5 feels like the makings of a potential bit of a steal there. But most importantly of all, similar to what the Cardinals did, taking a second-round pick and turning it into DeAndre Hopkins. Part of when you evaluate these drafts, you look at what the picks are used for. The Buccaneers turned a 4th-round pick into Rob Gronkowski. Like that in and of itself. You talk about arguably the greatest tight end or one of the 2 or 3 greatest tight ends of all time. He's taken a year off, so his body's going to, in theory, be fresher. You brought him in to play alongside Tom Brady, only had to give up a 4th-round pick to do so. Like, to me, that has to make the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winners out of this year's draft. And now, turning to some of the losers, I'll start with the Carolina Panthers. And I look at it when I saw the defense put out there about why they took Derek Brown or over Isaiah Simmons, it kind of sounded like loser talk almost. And that you weren't really sure you were going to utilize Simmons, and you felt Derek Brown was a safer pick. I like Derek Brown. I'm just saying, like, it felt bad. More importantly, though, in a league that is trending so heavily offensively, and for a team in the Panthers that had clear needs on both sides of the ball, to me, to draft all defensive players, not a single offensive player, feels incredibly reckless and borderline stupid. That doesn't mean that some of these guys don't pan out. It doesn't mean that some of these guys that they took, like the Derek Browns of the world and so forth, aren't going to be really, really good. It is more about the approach and the philosophy that I really question with them. Then you look at the Houston Texans. This is basically how I sum it up. They traded away a 1st-round pick in a very, very deep draft for left tackle talent in order to get another team's former 1st-round pick at left tackle that they now have had to pay a crap ton of money and blown up the left tackle market to do so. Whereas if they didn't trade for Tunsil and they had just kept their 1st-round pick, they might have been in a position where if they wanted to go up a little bit to get a left tackle, they could have damn done so, or just stayed put and taken one. But even beyond that, they had some draft deal worked out with the Lions. It didn't go through, and you saw Bill Bob on camera. He looked ticked. But you basically traded away DeAndre Hopkins in a 2nd-round pick for Brandon Cooks and Ross Blacklock. Like, how in the hell does that come across as any type of a winning deal whatsoever? How? Yeah, the Texans are losers, and I don't know that anybody's going to disagree with that. The Jaguars. Help me understand this. Former 5th overall pick, Jalen Ramsey, you trade him away for a 1st-round pick just to turn around and draft C.J. Henderson in the top 10. Like, that's spinning your wheels with your roster. I don't always buy that logic of, well, you bring in a cheaper option, you bring in a different guy. No, you're just kind of spinning your wheels because you're always plugging the same holes on your roster. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And then when you look at what they did with the other first round pick, they didn't get the Ngakoue deal done, which it sounded like they were trying to get done. As a result, they end up taking K'Lavon Chaisson, the edge rusher from LSU, after not being able to trade Ngakoue, after already drafting stud Josh Allen last year. I look at this and I say, what in the hell are you doing? Again, it's more of spinning the wheels. All the while, most importantly of all, you made a statement by not taking a notable quarterback prospect early in this draft. Jake Luton later on in the draft, I like as a prospect, long-term backup type of option, but you didn't take a guy with dude type of potential. So if you're not going to do that, that should at least be some type of indication or statement that you believe Gardner Minshew could be that guy. So if that is the case, why in the hell, if you didn't take a quarterback, didn't you do more to help Minshew out? And drafting 2 defensive players doesn't do that. Stupid. Sitting there at pick 9, you could have drafted Becton. You could have drafted Ruggs or Lamb, one of the wide receivers. And instead you went with the corner. When you already had a stud corner that you traded away. Just so that way, what? You could sit there and have C.J. Henderson for 3 or 4 years, and then when you decide you don't want to pay him and you treat him like crap, you're going to trade him away too? Makes no sense. Jaguars draft was stupid. Look at the Patriots. I like Duggar, but he was a reach there. Anthony Jennings, I thought, was a really big reach. They traded up to reach on Dalton Keene. Like, they traded up twice in the 3rd round to get 2 tight ends. And in both cases, I don't think they traded up and got the best tight end available on the board. They took a potentially racist kicker in the 5th round. And all the while, after having almost 2 decades of Tom Brady at the helm, they didn't draft one quarterback in this class. Now, maybe long-term it doesn't matter. Maybe long-term it pans out. But you would think, man, you are showing an awful lot of confidence if you're rolling somebody with, who you got on the roster? I don't even remember. You got Jared Stidham. Is it Brian Hoyer? Like, are you really going to roll with one of those guys as your starter heading into 2020 and you didn't take a chance on any of the quarterbacks in this year's class? Woo! That takes balls or sheer stupidity, one of the two. And speaking of sheer stupidity, it brings me to the Green Bay Packers, who I think for a lot of people are the preeminent losers in this year's draft cycle, which either means one of two things. The Packers' draft strategy, execution, approach, philosophy was really that god-awfully, almost historically bad, or a lot of people are going to be ass wrong in a couple of years. For a team that just made it to the NFC Championship game, granted, I felt like they were slightly fraudulent, like a bit of smoke and mirrors, but they got there. They got there. They were one game away from the Super Bowl. That puts you in a win-now mode, especially when you've just given Aaron Rodgers big-time money, even though he's 36 years of age. You go into this draft, and your first big move is to trade up from 30 to 26 to go get a guy in Jordan Love, who I like a lot as a prospect, yes, but for all intents and purposes is not designed to see the field for another 2 or 3 years. You could draw some parallels and comparisons to the Favre being there and then Rodgers was taken. There are some. It's not a perfect comparison, I agree, but to say that it's absolutely not relatable in any way is clown school crap, so cut it out. But when you combine that with, you did that in round 1, then you turn around and for all intents and purposes, you take a 3rd-string role-playing running back in A.J. Dillon at the end of round 2. Then in round 3, you take the Deguara kid from Cincinnati to basically try and make him into your use check. You just spend in the modern 2020 NFL a 3rd-round pick on a guy you're hoping can convert to fullback. All the while, for a team that's supposed to be in win-now mode in this great wide receiver class, you didn't draft a single one of them. What the hell are you doing? I've actually defended the trading up for and drafting of Jordan Love to a certain degree. But when you look at the overall body of work, where is the help for Aaron Rodgers in this offense? How the hell do you justify not taking a stab, at least one shot? You can't hit a home run if you don't swing the bat. How the hell do you go into this draft, this great wide receiver class, and not draft a damn single one of them? It makes absolutely no sense. But you made sure you drafted a 250-pound running back that was a reach in round 2 And then a guy you're hoping to convert to fullback and make him your use check at the end of round 3. If that isn't loser, then I don't know what the hell is.